My name is Drew Bishkowski, Head Performance Director here at APX Strength. And part of the Tier 1 certification process is for us to introduce you to Chapter 2, which is introducing you and making sure you understand fully our APX Neuromuscular Dynamic Proprioceptive Warmup, and that'll be on a 10-yard progression. There's 3 different phases of that. There's slow tempo, there's fast tempo, and ballistic. We'll also be going into ground-based spinal dynamic series, and we'll also go into upper extremities warm-up. Please make sure you pay attention. You'll be quizzed on 2 to 3 different coaching points, both on the anatomy and physiology of the movement, as well as the coaching point of the movement. To introduce the slow tempo and balance series, Coach Conley is going to start doing the striders, both forward and reverse. The first thing we want to do is identify ball of foot. Number 2, identify positive tilt while he's doing both the forward and reverse movement, covering ground with both strides, forward and back. And we're going to go ahead and activate the circulatory system. Those are the 3 coaching points for this movement. Coach Conley is now going to demonstrate the shuttles. We want to go ahead and make sure we're face front. We're not cheating side to side. The toes are pointed forward as much as possible. We're going to activate the medial glute here and the IT band. The second thing we're activating is the adductor and the groin. And making sure in coaching point 3, we're touching the rear deltoid touches, and we're alternating those, left to right and right to left. The next movement, groin, sumo, and pelvic thrust. Number 1, hip flexor activate. That's the main part of this stretch and this dynamic movement. And we're also activating, again, the groin and adductors. Very critical that we're targeting both the groin, adduction, and hip flexor in our first slow tempo and balance series. The next series is a 90-degree elbow lunge and reverse lunge. Very important here that we activate, most thing we're activating is the proprioceptive neural drive. That's entirely his whole body, and the proprioceptive part is the balancing mechanisms in it. As you see, he's placing his alternate arm up with the alternate leg, and that activates the whole neural drive and the balance mechanisms into it. So that's the main coaching point here. Also, number 2, low trunk stability is key that we're activating for the first time, and all the stabilizers that are connecting the 2. The next progression, inchworm. Coach Conley's going to come down, touch his hands, and you can see he goes ahead and stretches the arches of his feet by flattening the shoelaces to the ground and coming up as much as he can. Make sure you take a little rest in between each one. Main coaching points here, as far as the anatomy side, are activating the posterior lower chain and the anterior torso chain. 3 also is the core activation. We want to make sure his core is tight and involved with both connecting the posterior lower chain and the anterior torso chain. The next movement Coach Conley is going to do is the Spider-Man. You can see he's going to walk his hands forward. We're going to place the opposite knee right outside the elbow. He's going to drag that toe as he comes forward, and he walks like he's walking on a ladder, just on the ground. He's activated his anterior lower activation on this one, whereas the inchworm we did posterior lower activation. He's also anterior torso activation, just like the inchworm, and the entire total neural drive system's being activated. Next, isopendulum. Isopendulum, he's going to go ahead, and this is a balancing act. Again, we're activating the proprioceptive neural drive, just like we did with the lunge and reverse lunge series. He's challenging all of his stabilizers from the low trunk down. And he also has the posterior chain and low trunk stability, as we're targeting that on the back side of the hamstring, but the anterior chain, all the way from the top of his head down. The next series, forward and reverse grave diggers. You can call these what you want. We call them grave diggers. As you can see, he's going to come down. We have heel to toe relationship. He's going to go ahead and twist his body and activate even more of the chain as he rotates and extends his hand towards the sky. Make sure your eyes follow the hand. He's activating all 3 major hamstrings into the gastrocnemius and Achilles. On the reverse grave digger, He's pushing his hips backwards, again, keeping heel-toe relationship. Dorsiflex on the toe, on the foot that's in front, activating all major hamstrings into the Achilles. Now we're going to go ahead and transition into the fast tempo and balance series. We're going to start with the Russian march. And you can see here, the ball of foot and tilt is everything. We do not want the athlete to be tilting backwards or using momentum on this. He's locating and identifying ball of foot and keeping tilt moving forward. We're activating the ballistic hamstring. So we're starting to get more aggressive into the muscle activation, the neuromuscular system. Keeping the balance mechanisms as well. Leg swings, lateral and linear. Coach Conley's starting with the lateral. He's going to identify ball of foot. He's going to go ahead and extend his arms. And we're going to activate the torso. This creates the total neural drive of what we want to get out of this movement into the hip, ball, and socket joint. Also, the hip external rotators and fixators are working and activating all four major connections. Plus the IT band is stretching. He transitions into the linear. We perform 5 to 10 reps each way. Again, keeping total neural drive, tilt forward, and ball of foot as the main coaching points. We don't want any momentum other than activating hip flexors, hip external rotator, and ball of socket, all in the activation of the lower chain of the hamstring. Next is karaoke. We dissect it into both quick and fast. We start athletes with a slow tempo and then progress them according to their balance and stability. The purpose is a hip swivel and rotating around the spine for activation of the hips, groin, and abdomen. Also, abductors and adductors are firing here, stretching and strengthening. Once we get those progressions done, he's going to transition into a more of a ballistic motion, where that's where we want to coach the knee drive and rotation over. Remember, if your athletes are not ready for this type of movement, keep it in a low stride progression first. Very good. So next progression is the duck skip. We want to make sure the torso is locked, activating total neural drive. We want to flex the hands towards the ground. We're aiming and targeting the knee to come up and connect to the tricep. Locating ball of foot, we're going both forward and reverse. Hips, groin, and abdomen are strengthening and stretching here. Hip, ball, and socket joint activation, as well as hip external rotators and all the connectors. Okay, very good. Our next progression is the ballistic tempo and traction series. There are 4 movements. The first is high knee to low knee skip. You're going to start high knee, again, locating ball of foot and forward tilt. We're targeting the traction of opposite leg, opposite knee drive, and making sure we're getting full range of motion. So making sure that's the main coaching point with the kids or with your athletes. Everything's in alignment. Ballistic hip flexor activation. Coordination is a major coaching point here. Traction equality and tilt. He's going to transition into the low knee skip after this. On the ball of the foot. Again, we're maintaining ground contact the way we coach it. We want to make sure we're almost skipping and creating the turf divots out of the ground or the grass. We do not want to get much momentum swing other than creating the swing from our own self and creating from our neural drive that we're activating. The next is our shuffle and burst series. Again, we're wrapping the entire total neuromuscular drive together, and we're going to be activating the type 2A and type 2B fibers. This is the beginning of that progression. He's going to go ahead and shuffle and push off his glute medial, open up, and identify drive phase. Typically, the athlete will go 5 to 10 yards of activation, and he will go both ways. And again, let the head lead. Okay? The next progression here is 5-yard, 2-foot punch and burst. The athlete is going to go ahead and punch as quick as he can and burst out of it. Again, identifying drive phase. We're activating, again, the type 2A and type 2B series. Everything as you see Coach Conley doing is on ball of the foot. The next progression is just a simple position, stance, and burst. Get the athlete into whatever position that they play or into a comfortable athletic position and have them burst out of it with no false step. And you can use a cadence if you like set, hit, set, go. You can clap. Any type of thing to make the athlete respond with his brain, with his body. This wraps up our ballistic tempo and traction series. and also our dynamic neuromuscular proprioceptive warm-up. Next, we'll move on to the APX ground-based spinal dynamics series.